Shabbat Shalom, everyone. There's a phenomenon that is so common and widespread now, so normative, that I'm not sure that we even think about it or comment on it. And that's about commenting and how we comment. In the age of social media, it is the equivalent of, well, someone cuts their hair. Someone on Twitter, someone on Instagram, someone on Facebook, and we, one of their 7,000 closest friends, I liked your hair better longer. I personally started encountering this phenomenon, however, in the context of pastoral counseling, so I look at it slightly differently, and actually the companies who bring us social media look at it differently as well because they have all the studies on psychologically what this actually does. See, the thing is, we evolved to contextualize ourselves within groups of people who have bought into our lives. In other words, we've been Homo sapiens for maybe 500,000 years, and we've been Homo sapiens with our current cognitive function for about 80,000. And the vast majority of time in that 80,000 years, the people who could judge us and we would accept that judgment came from within extended family groups, not necessarily extended world groups. And so we don't know. We've had this going on for 5 minutes in human history, and we're just starting to learn the effect of such simple comments. Now, I know it seems all completely innocent, but this commenting on other people is something that is a natural thing to talk about in the current weekly portion. We are in Parashat Metzora. This is the second of two portions that are dealing with tzara'at, once upon a time translated usually as leprosy into English, these days translated more commonly as a flaky white eruption, which is such a heinous description. I hesitate to say that leprosy kind of sounds better. Anyway, this is the classic week where we tie in, and I'm talking about rabbis from all streams of Judaism, tie in tzara'at with Lashon Hora, so gossip, for want of a better word in English, but Lashon Hora, the evil tongue. And really quickly, if you want to feel inadequate to Jewish law, just go and Google the laws of Lashon Hora and see how the lives that we're living now are not even in dialogue with this. The reasoning behind Lashon Hora is that so much damage can be done when we talk about anyone else in any context, even praising them behind their back. It's worth reading the laws. That's not really the subject of what I want to talk about today, but the reason it's part of Metzora, the reason that Lashon Hora is bound together with tzara'at is that you can get tzara'at in two ways. You can get tzara'at of the skin, human tzara'at, or you can get house tzara'at, tzara'at of the white flaky eruption on the walls of your house. And Miriam, after she talked smack about her brother Moses, she gets kesed tzara'at, so therefore clear punishment for Lashon Hora. And the reason that this is the classic time to give that sermon when it switches over into house tzara'at might not be completely intuitive if you've grown up in a single family home your entire life, but those of us who have lived any amount of time in row home or apartments or any sort of house that is joined, it'll be a little bit more intuitive that when you get tzara'at on the walls of your house, the response to that is to then tear down that wall and rebuild it. And of course, the metaphor is clear then. If we are punished with tzara'at because of Lashon Hora, it's not just our house, metaphorically and literally, it's affected. It's also the house of our neighbors. So that's not my sermon, but that's the common sermon that's given, and it's still a good message to throw out there. Now, what I want to talk about is there are a couple truths that can be sussed out of this, related to, but beyond this truth of affecting our neighbors when we talk smack about someone. And there are two verses and two incredibly disparate commentators that, when taken together, I think bring out something really interesting. So we're in chapter 14 of Leviticus, and this is verses 34 and 35. 34 reads, Ki tavo el eretz Canaan, asher ani noten lechem la'achuzah, v'natati nega tzara'at b'bait eretz achuzatchem. When you enter the land of Canaan that I have given you as a possession, and I inflict an eruptive plague upon the house and the land you possess, comma, uva asher lo habait, v'hagid lakohen lemor, kenega ni'ali b'bait. The owner of the house shall come and tell the priest, saying, something like a plague has appeared on my house. Now, the two commentators, the first one is good old Rashi, who makes the comment that no matter how much you think that you are an expert in tzara'at, you're not the right person for the job. Call the priest. It's the priest's job to deal with that. This is followed by something that doesn't seem to be related, but this is from a commentator known as the Al-Sheikh. Al-Sheikh was a Kabbalist in Sfat, a student of Joseph Caro, was in that circle. And just to pull out a couple important sentences, commenting on this, I've seen something like a plague, which is a fascinating way of phrasing that. I've seen something like a plague in the house, but this is not what God has chosen. Rather, that they should say something like a plague has appeared to me on my house. That is if to say, for my sake it appeared on my house. For my sin, God made me liable for a plague of tzaraat. It should have been on me, and God placed it instead on my house. Now, not usually the sort of comment that I would comment on, but just hold on to that for a second. So in order to get at the truths that are underneath this, I want everyone to just take a second and think about how many people are in your circle of friends. How many have either explicit or tacit permission to enter your house, proverbially, and to tell you when something is going wrong? Now, I really mean that. I really mean for us to think about this today. How many people, if they were to unsolicited come to me and say, I think you really need to think about your behavior. I mean, in this world, in this day and age, anyone can say that to me, but who would I actually take that from? Who would I actually take that from in such a way that I would consider my behavior, that I would actually think about it, that would cause a series of events that would allow me to potentially change my behavior? And the answer, well, first of all, it's not meaning the people that will say that and we don't get defensive. If we're in the process of being corrected, nearly all of us are going to be defensive. But none of us are perfect. Therefore, part of how we get corrected is by having people that we trust, trusted advisors, trusted partners, trusted friends who have the ability and are allowed in one way or another to come in and say, you know what, you need to think about that. And honestly, the answer for me is maybe 3. One, definitely my wife, and even that's complicated because she's the only one who has complete non-tacit, explicit permission every day if that need be, but that's only come through trust, through repetition, and very explicit conversations on how we each need to be talked to. And then there are a few other people that know me well enough that they can step in and say, hey. And then there's another circle after that. It's the people under certain circumstances. So I have a great trust relationship with my doctor, for example, but if my doctor were to call me up and say, I really hate what you're doing with Beit Virtuali, they don't get a voice in that. That's completely inappropriate. They are not the right person for that job, even if the correction that they're saying is a correction that needs to be made. If, however, I'm in the doctor's office and unsolicited after a checkup for something else, they say to me, you really need to think about that. They've earned the right through that trust relationship and their expertise in that capacity. They're the right person for the job. And so I really challenge everyone to take a second and think about that. How many people have explicit or implicit or tacit permission to step into our house, as it were, and to say, you need to make a change? Okay, now let's turn it around. In the last year, in the last 5, but I think we can do it with probably a month, but let's just say a year. In the last year, if you're a Facebook user, go into your activities log and see how many people's houses, metaphorically, you've stepped into to correct them. You see, the question can be easily turned around. If I've got one, kind of 3, and then another circle of maybe 10 to 20 in certain situations, whose lists am I on as the person? How many people have explicitly said to me, you know what, if I'm messing up in this area, I want you to tell me about it? Or how many people have said, you know what, you are such a close, dear friend that I just want you to know you've got permanent permission to come in and be my designated butt kicker? And the answer is almost none, certainly less than 5. And if I'm being honest, it's 1 or 3, depending on how I count them, with another circle of maybe 10 or 20 more that under very specific circumstances and very specific things, I know that that would be taken as it is meant. Many of us have hundreds, if not thousands, of followers / friends / people that we are in some level of interaction with on social media. How many houses do we step into that we would never allow someone to step into our house? This is just a rephrasing of the golden rule, the Jewish expression of this: that which is reprehensible to you, do not do to someone else. And the Rashi is so powerful here because no matter how big of an expert you are still to call the right person for the job. I might indeed be the world's greatest expert in haircuts. It is not my job to say I liked it better, long or short. And this is a difference. This is a differentiated comment and conversation on our personal responsibility to overcome. We are going to be hurt. People are going to say, especially in this day and age, very hurtful things to us. And our job is to acknowledge and get past that. Acknowledge that we've been hurt and then overcome that and get past it. That is human evolution. That is personal and individual evolution. At the same time, as a member of a larger society, we have a profound responsibility to recognize when we are the person who is causing someone to have to acknowledge and get over what we have done to them. And that's most often going to happen when we step into a house where, even though we are the expert in it, we are not the right person for the job. And yeah, this gets really hard really quickly when that person who, I'm not the right person for the job, but they posted something really, really offensive. Well, if I'm not the right person for the job, it doesn't matter what I say. If I'm not the right person for the job, I will not be heard. And so I have to admit, I have to be completely honest in this moment that the reason I'm doing it is self-catharsis, to make me feel better by yelling at them, and to virtue signal. That is why I'm doing it. Oh, but tzedek tzedek tirdof, Rabbi. Justice, justice shall you surely pursue, says the Torah. Is it justice if what I'm saying cannot be heard because I'm not the right person for the job, or if I simply increase the amount of chaos and pain in the world? Someone, somewhere, has the job to actually help that person. If it's not me, then it's time for me to acknowledge that. And it's so hard because my ego demands that they learn in that moment on my time. And am I the right person to say when someone needs to learn something who is not that 1, 2, or 3 people who have said, you get to do that? Now, to close out, we did have another commentary from the Al-Sheikh. The other side of it is, we do have people that are the right person for the job. If there is no one in the world who has been given permission to ever be in dialogue with us so that we never need to be corrected for anything that we do, then we are on a very, very dangerous path. It's not only about a single belief. If our entire life is a non-falsifiable life, then that is no different than the most fundamentalist of all religions that we can have. It doesn't matter if you call it a religion or not. If we are so steeped in ideology that our beliefs cannot be questioned, if there is no one who can step in and say, that's worth a second thought, then we are on an incredibly dangerous path. And even though the theology, the way that the Al-Sheikh expresses this truth is perhaps, it feels a little bit painfully outmoded for us. It feels a little painfully anthropomorphic, painfully like God as a parental figure. The spirit of humility behind this is profound, because if in any true or metaphorical level something has appeared in my house that is going to cause harm to me because of my actions, and it's going to cause harm to those around me, and someone in that inner circle points it out to me, the right reaction is, I need to learn something. The right reaction is, thank you. The right reaction is, after acknowledging that we're probably going to be mad for someone daring to point out that we have something to learn, the right action is to learn. And with that I say, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Shivum Ladonai, Shechadash Shivum Ladonai.